She only came to deposit a check, nothing more. But within minutes, a quiet visit to the bank turned into a public spectacle. The manager's voice cut through the lobby, sharp and accusing, while every eye turned toward her. A black woman, calm, composed, surrounded by whispers that grew louder with every breath she took. They didn't see her credentials. They didn't see her worth. All they saw was her skin. And when the police were called, everyone thought they knew how this would end. But they were wrong. Because the moment those doors opened, the truth waiting outside would flip everything they believed upside down. She thought she was walking into a bank. She was walking into history. For Dr. Amelia Richardson, days usually began with silence, the kind only early mornings in Chicago's South Loop could hold, coffee steaming beside her laptop. She reviewed funding proposals for small businesses, the kind owned by people who rarely got second chances. Her work wasn't glamorous, but it was powerful, ensuring fairness in a system built to shut some people out. That morning, she had one simple errand: visit a suburban branch to finalize a transfer for a new community development fund. Just paperwork, signatures, and then back to her office downtown. She didn't expect the stares when she walked in, the way conversations paused, the way her presence shifted the air. She told herself it was nothing, but the weight in the room said otherwise. By the time she sat down with the branch manager, the tone had already changed, and not in her favor. He thought she was there to take something. She had come to build something. But what happened next would test not only her patience, but the entire system she'd spent her life trying to fix. The bank lobby was quiet enough to hear the tick of the clock above the tellers. Dr. Amelia Richardson sat calmly, hands folded over a leather portfolio, while the manager, Gerald Whitman, scanned her with suspicion instead of professionalism. His smile was tight, his tone clipped, each word coated with the arrogance of someone who thought authority excused prejudice. Around them, customers began to notice the tension, eyes flicking between the polished desk and the black woman sitting across it. Gerald's questions grew louder, sharper. "Millions? For someone like you?" he sneered, his voice carrying through the room. The humiliation was deliberate, designed to make her small, to remind her of where he believed she belonged. Amelia's pulse slowed instead of quickened. Years of witnessing injustice had trained her to let silence do the work. Still, the ache of familiarity burned beneath her composure. Phones began to rise. Customers recording, whispering, sensing something wrong, but unsure whether to intervene. A young woman near the ATM started live streaming, her shaky voice narrating what viewers could already see. A manager treating a professional woman like a criminal. The viewer count climbed. Gerald, unaware of the audience beyond his walls, picked up the phone and called security. Then the police. Protocol, he claimed, as though discrimination could be justified by paperwork. Amelia didn't move. She simply asked, softly, if he was sure that was the best decision. But arrogance rarely pauses to question itself. Gerald doubled down, announced to everyone that a potential fraud situation was underway. The word fraud sliced through the air, heavy and dangerous. The young teller behind the counter froze, torn between keeping her job and keeping her conscience. An elderly customer frowned, recognizing the ugliness unfolding but powerless against the tide of conformity. Every minute stretched longer, the weight of injustice thickening with every breath. Amelia's phone buzzed once, an incoming call labeled FBI Special Agent Williams. She declined it, her eyes never leaving the man who'd chosen this battle. The irony was invisible to him. He thought he was protecting the bank from a scammer. In truth, he was building a case against himself in real time. Outside, sirens approached faintly in the distance. Inside, tension twisted like a coiled spring. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Amelia sat unmoving, the calm center of a storm she hadn't started, but would soon finish. What no one in that lobby knew was that the real investigation hadn't begun yet, and when the truth arrived, it wouldn't just clear her name, it would shatter his entire world. He thought he had control of the story. In a few moments, he'd learned she was the one writing it. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, echoing against the marble floors like a countdown. Every face in the bank turned toward the entrance. Gerald stood tall behind his desk, arms crossed, wearing the smug confidence of a man certain justice was on his side. Dr. Amelia Richardson didn't flinch. When the door swung open and two uniformed officers stepped in, the air turned electric. Cameras lifted. The live stream ticked past 20,000 viewers. "There she is," Gerald announced, gesturing toward Amelia as though unveiling a trophy. The officers exchanged a glance before approaching, their expressions uncertain. Amelia rose slowly, movements calm, deliberate. Her voice was measured, but carried authority that didn't match the scene. She reached into her portfolio, not with fear, but with precision, and placed a black leather credential wallet on the desk. The officers paused. Gerald frowned, confused. Officer Martinez leaned in, his trained eyes catching the gold seal, the holographic emblem, the embossed letters that could not be faked. The badge glimmered under fluorescent lights. Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Senior Compliance Officer. Silence swallowed the room. Gerald's smirk faded, replaced by the dawning horror of a man realizing the ground beneath him was gone. The woman he'd called the police on wasn't a fraudster. She was the investigator sent to audit him. Amelia's voice remained calm, almost gentle. She explained that for the past 41 minutes, every word, every gesture, and every act of discrimination had been recorded as part of a federal compliance investigation. The red light on the device in her folder blinked steadily. Proof of everything. Gerald's face drained of color. His lips parted, but no words came. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly customer, gasped softly, her hand trembling over her handbag. Maria, the young teller, covered her mouth in disbelief. The officers stepped back, their demeanor shifting instantly from suspicion to respect. Dr. Richardson, Officer Martinez said quietly, "How would you like to proceed?" Gerald stumbled over his words. She never identified herself. Amelia turned toward him, eyes steady. Investigators aren't required to announce themselves during active discrimination audits. That would compromise the integrity of the data. Her words landed like a verdict. The crowd murmured, recording every moment. Outside, the sound of another siren cut through the air, this one deeper, official. A black SUV pulled up. From it stepped a man in a tailored dark suit, with the unmistakable air of federal authority. He crossed the threshold, eyes sweeping the stunned lobby before locking on Amelia. Then, in front of the crowd, the cameras, and a trembling Gerald Whitman, Special Agent Marcus Williams of the FBI Financial Crimes Division stopped, straightened, and saluted. "Dr. Richardson, ma'am," he said firmly. "Agent Williams, reporting as requested." The words hit like thunder. The same man Gerald had called to arrest her was now standing at attention, honoring her authority. The irony was complete. The bank fell into reverent silence, broken only by the sound of hundreds of phones capturing history in real time. Gerald sank into his chair, his career, his arrogance, his certainty all crumbling at once. Amelia didn't gloat. She simply nodded, the embodiment of calm power. "Thank you, Agent Williams," she said softly. "Please inform your team the investigation has concluded." Around them, customers exchanged glances, some teary-eyed, some speechless, realizing they just witnessed the most public reversal of prejudice imaginable. Gerald looked up at her, face pale, lips trembling. I didn't know who you were," he whispered. Amelia's gaze didn't waver. "You didn't need to," she replied. "You only needed to know who I was not." And as the reality of what had unfolded sank into every corner of that room, one truth became impossible to ignore. Justice had arrived in the exact form this man least expected. But the fallout of that moment, the reckoning it would ignite, was only just beginning. When the agents and officers finally left, the bank was no longer just a building. It was a witness. The marble floors that once gleamed with quiet confidence now echoed with the weight of shame and disbelief. Gerald Whitman was escorted out, not in handcuffs, but in silence, a silence louder than any siren. His name, once associated with 23 years of management, was now trending across the country as a symbol of everything wrong with the system he represented. Dr. Amelia Richardson remained composed, speaking briefly with the tellers, assuring them that her investigation wasn't about vengeance but accountability. The elderly Mrs. Patterson clasped her hand, whispering, "Thank you for not staying silent." And that Amelia knew was a point. Silence is what sustains injustice. Within days, the footage spread beyond state lines. News outlets picked it up, think pieces were written, and people debated what it meant that a woman had to hold federal credentials to be believed. For every supportive message came another filled with denial, proof that even undeniable evidence couldn't erase deeply rooted prejudice. But Amelia didn't need validation. Her mission had never been to humiliate a man. It was to expose a system that still judged worth through the color of skin. The Federal Reserve issued a statement confirming the investigation's findings. Systematic discrimination in lending practices, disciplinary actions pending, and a nationwide audit of similar branches underway. Policies would change, trainings would be mandated, and executives would face consequences. But Amelia knew that true change couldn't be legislated. It had to be lived. She stood outside the same bank days later, the fall wind catching the edge of her coat, watching strangers walk in and out, some unaware, some still whispering about that incident. She didn't seek credit. The real victory was that thousands of people had seen the truth unfold in real time. No filters, no edits, just raw injustice, finally caught in the light. Somewhere out there, a young black entrepreneur might walk into a bank tomorrow and be treated differently, not because the world had suddenly become fair, but because one woman refused to lower her eyes when the world tried to make her small. And maybe that's how change begins, not with riots or revolutions, but with moments that force us to look at ourselves and ask the question we've avoided for too long. In a nation that calls itself equal, how many more times will someone have to prove their humanity before we finally believe it?